Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to be taking technique number 5, how do I heat emboss, from this rubber stamping for the first time book. And this is a pretty literal exercise for me, or chapter for me, because I have never embossed before. Now, I don't know. When I say never, I might have done it once when I was working for a stamp in the hand company back in the day, but I don't recall doing that. In fact, the heat gun that I'm using right now, I'm just using because my wife wasn't using hers, and the embossing powders that I'll be using today in this video, I borrowed from her. I thought I had some, but I took a look at them, and I don't know, they're called something like melts or something like that. And the only powder I had was a detailed copper, and I don't know. I couldn't think of anything that I wanted to do with that as far as this first kind of introduction into the powders. So I borrowed some white, black, and clear embossing powder from her. Okay, now here's the thing. I didn't know what the formula was. I know there's pads out there for embossing, like you just do a clear impression, right, and then you sprinkle the different color powders on top. But I didn't know what the formula was for doing, say, black detailed embossing. Being that I've stamped out the impressions here in the VersaFine Black, should I use black powder over the top of it, or do you use clear? Or does it really make a difference? Now, I'm guessing the clear would look a little bit different, but I don't know how much. And when do you decide to use what here? That's what I'm kind of curious about. So, if you have some kind of like embossing, 001 instructions for me, let me know. And just little things like kind of tapping off that excess powder was something I was kind of curious about. After I started doing this type of thing and kind of like wiping off powder off of that, I thought, maybe I should just use the clear. If I already have black in the impression, maybe just go with clear, then I don't have to worry about that kind of those little straggler bits of black powder on other areas of the card that I don't want it on. And I asked my wife about it, and she said there's some kind of like anti-static bags or something that you wipe on your paper or something like that, so you don't get those little bits. So I don't know, I'll need to look into that. Okay, so here I am using the embossing gun, and I didn't know how long I needed to keep it. Now, I know that, when you start doing this, you can see the embossing powder melt, right before your eyes, but I think it took, the heat gun a little bit of time to heat up. See, I'm used to drying brilliance inks with my heat gun, okay, and those dry like really fast, so I just wasn't aware of just how much time you have to kind of focus that heat gun at a given area to get it to melt. So I kind of under melted, I think, in these first couple I don't know, exercises in this video. And this is when I realized, oh, it's not melted. Okay, so here I am doing it, getting a little bit of better job here. I was a little bit gun shy with the amount of time that I'd focused that heat gun on, because I've been using my heat gun on my foils, okay, and you don't want to concentrate that heat too long on foil, otherwise it can pucker the foil, or if you're using something like a silver, it can kind of rainbow it, with that melt on there. But I don't know. I think I got it here. But even so, okay, now here's the thing too. I didn't heat it enough, because when I start coloring this in with the alcohol pen, I was kind of moving around some of that VersaFine Clair. So either that VersaFine Clair stayed wet underneath the embossing powder, or I didn't do a complete job of getting that powder with complete coverage over that ink. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what happened there, but you'll see how I deal with it later on. But anyways, this type of application here, I've always thought would be perfect for something like a watercolor style of application. Now I'm doing this on glossy cardstock, so if I were to do watercolors over the top of embossed imagery like this, I would probably do it on I don't know, like a silk weight card or a matte. Okay, something that's a little more conducive for the watercolors. I'm talking about watercolor painting on top. I thought that would be perfect for it. Okay, so the second one, I'm going to go into the application for embossing that I've always thought would be perfect for the technique. Okay, so I'm just showing you kind of an example of a foundation scene. Okay, now stamping my foreground imagery over the top of a scene like that, where we'll actually have three-dimensional raised images, and from the embossing, I thought would be perfect for that. And I've always thought that over the years, so I don't know. Here you'll see me kind of getting around to it for the first time. Why it's taken me so long to do this, I don't know. Someone made a comment that they have so many other techniques that they're working with and exploring, and sometimes you just don't want to try a new one because it kind of opens up 10 more doors, or what I mean, 5 more doors, 3 more doors, but each one of those doors leads to 2 more doors, and it just keeps branching out, in a never-ending kind of pattern, which is a good thing for us stampers. Us stampers, we're always looking for new things to try, right? And I don't know, this embossing here, especially in the scene that I'm doing right now, really opens up a huge, huge door for me. When I stamped out the imagery and embossed it, to me, they are three-dimensional, but they just look like they're so much kind of farther apart from the background than just a two-dimensional stamped image. Now, I've always done it in high contrast, like my foreground imagery. I often do it in black against a lighter background, and that gives it some depth. But this is like, I don't know, it blows the doors off of that look. It just looks so much closer to the individual in comparison to the scene behind, which, I don't know, is pretty phenomenal for something that's, it's not that raised up, but it's raised up enough. Possibly because the powder is also shiny, maybe, I don't know. So you're getting some reflection off of it. I don't know, that's what I'm just thinking about right now, as far as one of the reasons why it looks just so raised or farther apart from the objects behind it. I don't know, but definitely something to explore. I'd really invite you to do that. A lot of you have embossing powders and whatnot. Some of them you have to, kind of get out of the mothballs. They've been sitting around for so long. Embossing, I know some people have embossed, all along. But I think it's kind of been a lost art in many ways. It's one of the things that really got people into stamping early on. A lot of people always mentioned, when I asked, how did you get into stamping, I'd say about 75% of the people would say it was embossing, as far as a technique that really hooked them on stamping and got them to really explore and just get fully into the medium. This is back in the kind of in the 90s to, I'd say, maybe late 90s. I don't know, maybe even to 2000. It was embossing, and that was for the people that got into it in the early 90s or maybe even the 80s. Later on, it turned into Stampin' Up! Was kind of the main thrust into rubber stamping. But, as far as the technique went, that was a really key technique. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just I'm applying these different colors into the scene. Now, my color application here is not, very smooth. It's because I'm really trying to expedite this process right here because, the video is about embossing. But for me, and I should have had this scene already stamped out, but I really, I'm kind of figuring out things on the fly when I do some of these videos. But this is really going to be one of the, I think, the key, I don't know what they call killer applications of something, something that is a really kind of a key usage of a given technique or medium. And this one's going to be it right here for me because I do scenes that look like this type of scene all the time, be it on glossy or matte cardstock, using whatever media that I'm doing, okay? But having that foreground stamped right into something like this really changes the whole spirit of it. Okay, so like I said, when I was doing this, this looks really sloppy. You can see it's real blobby. I have kind of splotchy kind of applications of color everywhere. And again, because I was kind of rushing this right now. All right, so the pens here, the alcohol pens kind of clean up a little bit of what I was doing. This is a really light value of kind of like a tan, I think. So I'll blend in some areas with these pens right here. But okay, so I'm talking about, kind of a blobby application of a lot of colors. It's real heavy-handed, and it still looks that way, okay? But the things that I do on scenes like this, with white pigment ink, with acrylic paint pens, things like that, that tends to remedy everything in the end result, okay? So I just look at that. Now, I was a little bit worried about this one as, kind of a, I don't know, choppy as it all looks. But I just keep adding to it, and inevitably they all come together. You might not believe it, because a lot of people just remember kind of my end results. But if they look at it kind of in a preliminary way, during the process, I think they would kind of get where my scenes kind of come from, okay? And they often go through this process, during the, I don't know, the kind of making of a card that looks kind of like pretty blobby. And, in this one right here, there's just no kind of crisp elements and whatnot. Okay, now here's the thing, though. When I stamp those foreground images in here, it adds a very, very crisp element to the scene. Here I'm looking to see which fence I should use in here. From Nature Set number 26, okay? I'm just going to use a small portion of it here, coming up from the bottom. And I'm stamping it out in a VersaFine Clair, okay? We know how detailed and thick that ink is, so I thought it would be perfect for these impressions here. And it's also the same pad that I used on those first impressions on that first card, okay? All right, so from the covered bridge set, I'm just going to use these leaves as overhanging leaves, okay? So those trees in the background, I didn't render those, and color them very well. Sorry for stamping off the screen here somewhat. But see, adding these crisp elements like that, look at what these did right here. That really improved the scene, okay? So you can have kind of blobby, kind of muddled applications of color that you've colored everything with, but suddenly, now I've pushed all of that to the background, okay? But we've also balanced all of that muddled type of coloring application. We balanced it out with some very crisp imagery. Okay, now on this one I've decided to go with clear embossing powder, but only because I wanted to try the different combinations here. So I went black on black the first time. This one is clear on black. And I think if I'm ever going to do black impressions, or black imagery, okay, I'm going to go with black impressions and clear embossing, okay? That way, if I get some of that residual black little flecks of embossing powder on other things, or flecks of embossing powder on other things, I'd rather have it clear than black, okay? I just want the embossing powder on the things that I'm embossing, not throughout the scene, okay? All right, so that, I don't know, that I found that kind of interesting how that looks. That clear embossing looks over the top of that black powder. And also one of the things too, when I went black powder over black ink, when I was embossing it, I couldn't see it change as much as this clear one is over the black, okay? So, I don't know. Let's see how this one, see this one, I could really tell it, change, when it changes sufficiently or completely, I guess. You can really tell that transformation right there. And look how much fun that is. That's what everyone loved about embossing, watching that kind of transformation happen. All right, so now we have this raised imagery in these foreground objects right there. I realized, oh, I don't think I hit every area. This is new to me, folks, so, I don't know, I just didn't do it clearly. Or completely, I should say. But look how raised those look. And look how far apart they look from the background. Now, I'm going to have to play around with some colored imagery sometime, too. I don't have a lot of, I don't have a variety of VersaFine Clair inks, okay? I don't have, like, a dark green or, autumn colors for, like, maple leaves and whatnot. But, oh my gosh. That opens up a lot of doors. Okay, now I'm touching it there thinking, okay, is that cooled down or is it, like molten wax on there? And it's definitely cooled at the touch. But I don't know those types of things. Okay, so, okay, now in that muddled area in the grass, I'm adding in some sharp little details, in the form of these little dots. They're little highlights in here. And they really kind of liven up those areas in there. I'm doing it in the lime green right here. That doesn't stand out very much against that grass, but we will work contrast more, and I will, add in some white that'll provide a much, deeper contrast. Okay, this is a little bit of tan here. Adding it down in that roadway, because it's related to that color of, brown, in that dirt road. Okay. I mean, if you only have white, you can use white, but I'm using the colors here just because I have them. And they, they create a little bit less contrast than white. Sometimes white stands out really strong, so you don't want to use it too much, especially in darker areas, but it's nice having the, especially the pastel colors in paint pen form. And look at that. You see how it brings those old trees to life in the background and, just kind of overall textures. So that's how it brings a crisp element into those muddled, colored areas like that, okay? Now, here's the thing that I also do, okay? This, I mention this all the time, but I recommend people learn how to use kind of faint applications of white pigment ink in their scenes, because look at that. Look how good that looks. Doesn't it kind of lend itself to a real dreamy looking scene? Plus, it's adding kind of light into certain areas. It's adding texture, but you know what it's doing too? It's hiding my weaknesses. Everyone thinks, oh my gosh, you're just a master at it. I'm not a master at really anything, okay? Well, I'm a master at maybe obscuring kind of my weaknesses, okay? And which are many. So in terms of like color applications, media, new media, whatever, colored pencils, I can usually make a scene look pretty decent by kind of obscuring what I don't want people to see really well. Plus, it's not just hiding something, it's enhancing at the same time, so you get that kind of dreamy little walkway right there. And I don't know, I think it looks really good. Okay, so we're starting off with another piece right here and doing white on dark. Okay, in this case, of course, it's blue. This is the Recollections blue. It comes in packs of 25 sheets of 8.5 by 11 for $6, which is an amazing deal. But those things are always on sale. I'm guessing once a month. Again, it's usually like a buy one, get one 50% off. I haven't seen the $3.33 just flat rate per pack in a while, so it's usually a buy one, get one free. So they have many different colors, but the two color packs that I like the best, because there's 5 sheets of 5 different colors in each, are the jewel tone pack and the primary pack. This is the blue from the primary pack, but I like the blue from the jewel tone pack a little bit more, but I've used up all 5 sheets, so I definitely need to go back in and get another pack of that. Okay, but they sell it online or in store. My store always has it. Okay, so there is white Hero Arts Unicorn White, okay? A lot of people are familiar with that white pigment ink. You can use whatever pigment ink. I don't think I'd use, well, I'd say I wouldn't use the Brilliance, but you know, when I stamp something in the Brilliance on foil, it does stay wet for a pretty long period of time. Okay, so maybe you might be able to emboss with the Brilliance. I'm not sure. Okay, so this is white on white. Okay, and I don't know if you noticed, but the white impressions on this foil aren't very white. They're a lot more translucent. Okay, they're not see-through or anything like that, but I don't know if there's a 50% opacity with it, but this white pigment ink I think will give me the opacity that I'm going after in this imagery. Okay, that's how I wish pigment inks would look stamped out on something. You know, we're always looking for the whitest pigment ink. Okay, and I don't know, the whitest one there that I know of. The reputation was that the Hero Arts one is whiter than most, okay? That's why I got it. It was that was the consensus of all the customers at a store that I went to. And it's great too. But I just wish it was like this white here. But I don't know, that doesn't exist in the stamping world, so anyway, I'm liking the look of this white here. It's funny, on this video I can see it change a little bit more than when I was doing it right in person, okay? But, okay, I got a little bit of that halo of, I don't know, kind of excess white embossing powder I just noticed right there in the corner. Right above the kind of some of those distant trees. I don't know, I think it looks okay, but I know I didn't really notice that before. Okay, so on this, I mean, we could just stamp a quote stamp in there and just be done with it. And that's what I do later. But I don't emboss the quote. I'm going for a little bit of contrast. So what I do is I just stamp the quote in the Brilliance white pigment ink, because that'll dry on the foil. And I'll need to heat set it. I mean, spray seal it. But I don't know. You could just do everything and emboss it and just be done. It would be a cool Christmas card or something like this in this color, or you can do it in like a gold or a silver, I think, and that would be pretty interesting. You can do. I don't know if you get sick of doing the same Christmas card. Maybe you do different colors. White on. Yeah, red or green would also be a pretty good selection. You can emboss maybe gold on silver. I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking out loud, but I think those different kind of combinations would be cool. Okay, so I'm adding in some additional texture. Okay, we have very crisp white contrasted images in here. Okay, so I'm adding this paper towel kind of cloud template type of technique here. But going back into it with the Brilliance ink, you can see it's just, well, especially in the amount that I'm using on this card, it's just not really very, it's not opaque, okay, it's translucent. So you get the blue of the foil showing through that. But in this case, I think that looks good, like that, to have some contrast. I wouldn't want that cloud to be so white that it would obscure the silhouette of the trees, okay, in this case. So anyways, I thought that looked pretty good, but to me, it looked a little bit incomplete from what I know it could look like, so I'm mixing up some the Dr. Martens bleed proof white here to splatter paint the like some snowfall into the scene, just to give it some added texture, okay? Just as is, it was looking like, I don't know, it was missing some kind of element, so something like this right here, I felt added to the overall look. Now I'm going to go kind of lightly in the upper right hand area. See, I didn't spray too much over there. I sprayed it more on the left hand side. And it's because I knew I was going to use some kind of word stamp up in that sky area, so I didn't want it too kind of speckled. Now if you get too much up there, you can always remove it. You just take a paper towel and just wipe those little white little specks off. You can do it when it's wet or after it dries, and it dries like in a few seconds, so it's no problem removing it. But like I said, I will spray seal this, okay? And you got peace right there, okay? Now that when that Brilliance ink stamps out, or when you apply it, it will look a lot lighter than what it will look like when it dries, okay? So just keep that in mind. All right, so I'm just kind of pointing out kind of the contrasts between the white pigment ink and the white embossed imagery, and just how much whiter that embossed white looks. I don't know, it's the lightest white I've done on gloss foils, okay? Because I haven't embossed before, so. Okay, now this one right here. Okay, now this one right here I had some problems with, because this is the first thing I've ever embossed before, so I didn't know the dynamics of, say, something like that VersaFine Clair underneath that powder. But when I do start going into this with my alcohol pens, I do start dragging out some of that VersaFine Clair that's underneath that embossing powder. Or I just didn't coat it enough with the embossing powder, and I'm dragging that around, okay? It didn't really occur to me when I was doing this, these alcohol inks on the rocks, but especially when I was dragging around some colors up in the sky, so I'll obscure that. So you'll see some, how to do some kind of repair work for, if you encounter some kind of unintentional marks, okay, or effects. All right, now one of the things with these rocks, do you notice how the tops of the rocks are still light as I'm coloring them? It's because I'm coloring them about 50% to about 70% up the way, okay? I'm not coloring the top so that it looks like light is coming in from above, okay? So they're being top lit. Okay, now this is where I started realizing, oh, I'm dragging around some of that black. And then when I ran it into the reeds, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm dragging in some color, so smearing some of it. So either I needed to heat set it longer, or I just need to get a VersaFine Versamark, whatever those embossing pads are. I probably need to invest in that. See, look at that, how that really kind of dragged out up there. I didn't get any, maybe it occurred to me that the tree tips were really dragging colors. So see that, all that gray coming off of there? It's because the black's coming off of there. And alcohol is, it's like a solvent, so it can kind of like put the oil-based VersaFine Clair back into solution, even if it's fairly dry. So right here, I'm kind of being careful not to drag that around too much more. So I'm kind of applying inks over that area fairly lightly. But see, I don't know what it is. On the tops of the trees, I'm dragging ink around, okay? So I'm totally smearing it. But I know that if I use some white pigment ink over those areas, I might be able to kind of remedy it. So here I am I'm going in here with a really light tone and trying to blend around in here. You know, so I'm trying to obscure some of those drag marks, okay? And you can do that a little bit because you can put those, like I said, you can put that color back into solution, be it the oil of the VersaFine Clair or the previous applications of alcohol, you know, because alcohol will will dissolve alcohol. And then in the true spirit of, I don't know, kind of a mistake, obscurity, you just stamp, I'm just going to stamp a kind of an overhanging limb right over those kind of smears up on the tops of those trees. So I don't know. You really can't see it too much. Okay, so that was like a really light peach tone. I wanted to add a little bit of warmth within the cool colors of the blue and kind of gray. The gray was unintentional, though. Okay, so here's brilliance. I'm using the brilliance here. Now, this, I mean, it would probably be ideal if I emboss these, which I probably should have done since this is an embossing video, but I just used the brilliance pigment ink because it would go straight on there, and I wouldn't have any problem with it drying. And here's the brilliance ink that I'm putting right over all those alcohol ink pads, okay? Because I knew the brilliance will stick to alcohol with no problem at all. Plus, it'll dry in it with no problem, okay? And you can heat set it in just a few seconds. All right, so heat setting brilliance inks is much faster than heat setting like embossing powders. Brilliance ink is just designed to dry really quickly, so if you heat set it, it's really, you know, kind of a quick method of drying. Okay, so here comes my white pigment ink, and watch how I kind of I'll go along the shoreline a little bit. Don't put it everywhere. Kind of oscillate it. Kind of have some and then none and then some and then none. Okay. So see that? How in the distance it kind of gives it that soft look. It's a textural change. It's a lighting kind of scheme addition, you know, because this is white, so it looks like illuminated fog. Now see, on the fisherman and boat, see, I'm not putting it over everything. See, the front of the boat is untouched. So that's my general concept with it. You put it over some of the objects, but not everywhere. Or you put it over some of the areas, but not everywhere, okay? So you see those distant trees are, you know, kind of obscured a little bit in fog. It pushes them back distance-wise. It makes the Lakeside Cove a little bit more three-dimensional by having some areas kind of obscured like that. But that's, you know, that took care of a lot of the smears that I had around. I don't know, they're just not as apparent now with coverage, okay? You can cover it up with imagery, but you can also cover it up with, like in this case, white texture, okay? Sometimes you can just put areas that you don't like in darkness too, like they're in shadow, but on this one I don't want to do that. I'm just testing to see if, okay, these things were smearing. Is everything embossed or what? I can't, you know, I couldn't tell because, you know, like I said, I haven't done this before, so I'm just kind of making sure, you know, I can touch these and they're solid. All right, now I'm touching around on here, you know, just to make sure that I got everything. Now this one really, I love this one right here. Look at that fence stand out like that. I'm guessing there's like a matte glossy too. I don't know, like a matte black detailed powder. I have no idea. Okay, now I got this far in these, so I thought, well, let's format these into cards and see what they look like. So there they are as, in this case, postcards. I didn't want to do a folding card. I was kind of already spent a lot of time on this video, so I just made some postcards like that. But I thought that looked really good. And this is just some black glossy cardstock, and I thought that's perfect for this black embossing because it kind of matches that texture and value of, the black. So it's nice deep black, and it kind of brings that out. So it's kind of like a black lacquer frame in some ways. But look how dimensional that looks. That's my favorite one. Now I'll do some other things with foils. The foils are tricky though because you don't want to have that heat gun in those areas for too long. So I did get some puckering of the surface of this foil, especially with this foil because it's such a cheap foil. It's cheap, but I love it, And it's so cheap that you really feel kind of very comfortable with experimenting with it. 25 sheets, that's 100 sheets, quarter size, card size pieces. And this one right here, if I were to do this again, what I would do is I would stamp it on more of a matte or satin cardstock so that I can do some watercolors over the top of it and not worry about the embossed images because they would be raised. Okay, so anyways, that is my first kind of experiments in embossing, my first experiences in general with embossing, and I really had some fun with it. And I think it really opens some doors for some other kind of opportunities and looks in a lot of existing techniques. Thanks for watching.